Ryder. Here's Ryder. What's up, YouTube? Say hello, YouTube. Chat. You poop. Chat. You YouTube chat again. Okay, so once again, if you have any requests, put them in the comment section below. It will help with the algorithm. Okay, but here's Retro versus Modern Video Games. Which is better? By Retro Bird. Let's check it out. Let's see what's going on.
It's a battle for the ages, or rather, for people of all ages. Retro versus modern games. Not to imply that the only people who like older games are older people. I'd like to think plenty of the younger generations play older games. And I can say for a fact that plenty of older gamers like newer games. You're looking at one. That being said, even if it doesn't affect everybody, I'd still say there's an overall bias where people prefer things they grew up with, like being happy. But it's no coincidence your grandpa doesn't have super soakers hanging on his wall. But what about decorative spoon racks? And you're back in business. When having a battle such as this, retro versus modern games, we'll first need to define the terms retro and modern, since unfortunately, the dictionary doesn't quite get the job done here. You see, by strict dictionary definition, retro games would be video games that are imitative of games from the past, not the actual games from the past themselves. So stuff like Sonic Mania or Streets of Rage 4, what some would also call modern games, which would result in an awkward battle with some overlap, like the color yellow versus bananas. Hey, this one looks ready for some banana bread. We're looking for both a winner and a loser. And lucky for us, the term retro, when referring to retro gaming, has been appropriated by the community to refer to the actual older games themselves, as has always happened with words since, the beginning of time. Yeah, words have changed in meaning over time for as long as time goes back, based on how us humans have decided to use them. It's not like something like math, where you can't change it. Wait, actually, we did change math too, didn't we? I tell you what, to make it real simple, by having the conversation of retro versus modern, we're essentially just having a conversation about older games versus newer games, in a very loose, general sense. We still have those newer games that try to be like older games, though, and while I'd still say that there are some noticeable differences between the two, I do think that overall, the lines between retro and modern games have been starting to blur together more and more over time, a trend that I'd expect to continue with the popularity of indie games, the main source of newer games that take inspiration from older games. As a result, most people who play games have become comfortable with games looking like this, and therefore older retro games themselves, at least when it comes to the 2D sprite-based games. The visuals of early 3D games don't always get a pass, and heck, even some retro gamers will tell you their visuals don't look good. But I say all of that to say this: when comparing retro games to modern games, depending how you look at it, you might be tempted to pair a lot of the lower budget games with the retro side of things. If there's one regret I have, it's that I gave the impression with a couple of my older videos that I don't like modern games because I've criticized them. Thing is, I've loved every new generation of video games as they've come out, buying all the systems and having a lot of fun with them. I just also happen to have criticisms of them, many of which even the biggest fans of modern gaming tend to agree with me on. Not wanting to feel nickel and dimed by companies jamming stuff like microtransactions and loot boxes where they shouldn't be is something most people will agree on. It's okay to criticize things you love. I criticize pretty much everything I love. Well, maybe not quite everything. When comparing modern to retro, the biggest thing that tends to come up is the immediacy of retro gaming compared to the lack of immediacy in modern gaming. All the things that get in the way of letting you play. When it's time to play a retro game, you're ready to go. And
so his segue didn't exist. So I wanted to mention this at the beginning, but I figured I'd wait until, like, I thought he was gonna like have a consensus between like what his line is between modern and retro, but I feel like it's not a hard line. I feel like everybody has their own line that they draw, and for me, that line is HDMI. If it uses HDMI, it's a modern console. If it uses anything else, basically, it is a retro console. And if it's a handheld, really, that's just whatever generation it came out in. I consider like the PS3 and 360. That is like kind of a midway point because oh,
Digital Soul Spark just raided with 5 viewers.
thanks for the raid, Sparky boy. Appreciate it. We're recording a video right now. But yeah, like I consider the 360 and PS3 a midway point because they had HDMI outputs, but they also had analog outputs, which so far only that generation had. Plus, when you think about the Wii never had an HDMI output. So like that was still that generation where it was on the line between modern and retro. So I like to call that like pre-modern or post-retro. Like I like kind of put it in its like midway point. But I think it leans towards modern because I mean like HDMI. It still had HDMI. But yeah, thank you for the raid, Sparky boy. I appreciate it. We're watching videos right now.
After mere seconds of anticipation, you're off to the races. But with modern games, not so fast there, buckaroo. You'll play when the game is ready, not when you're ready. With modern consoles often requiring updates for either the game itself, the console itself, or on especially lucky days, both. Love it when that happens. And you only had an hour to play before you go to bed. Might as well just go to bed now. To be fair, not all updates are that bad, with most of the updates I've ever needed for the Switch only lasting a few minutes or so, and often as little as 1 minute. But for any updates required, planning ahead is my solution. Have all your updates taken care of before you intend to actually play. Like preheating an oven, and when those updates are finally done, how sweet it is to now have to wait through cutscenes. Well, hey, cutscenes may not be gameplay, but you are still technically playing the game, and they're designed to be enjoyable. It just comes down to preference. Plus, to be fair, it's not like retro games are all gameplay 100% of the time either.
Yeah.
Anybody here ever play the Final Fantasy games? One
Classic.
of retro gaming's most treasured series. It just comes down to what type of games you enjoy and choosing to play those games accordingly. If you do like story, and especially cutscenes to flesh out the story, then modern games have a big advantage here. Not that retro games can't tell a good story, but I cried at the end of The Last of Us. Modern games have the ability to almost feel like movies, and while that often gets brought up as a criticism, it's reasonable to think some people might like to at least occasionally have their games feel like movies. I mean, people like movies. It's not like modern games are being made to feel like work. Well, depending who you ask, at least. The thing is, modern games allow for the possibility of certain experiences that just aren't possible in the same way on older consoles. Quick question for you. What does everybody dream of being? That's right, Spider-Man.
This guy is silly. It feels like such a non sequitur. Quick question. What does everybody dream of being? That's right, Spider-Man. He's right, though. I do dream of being Spider-Man. I do often have dreams that I'm swinging from webs, actually.
Something many of us have dreamt of playing as a kid is now a reality. I gotta say though, it does seem like most big release modern games have lots of cutscenes in them, almost as an
had many
expectation
Spider-Man
and
dreams
a
in my
given.
life?
Take the Souls
In your
games, for
life, rather?
example. I've heard lots of people say, "Where are the cutscenes?" Also, where is the easy setting? To which I say, "Ha, an easy setting? No way, we're not playing games here." Oh wait, that's exactly what we're doing. With retro games having a reputation for being hard,
You're the one
difficulty
being
is a
swabbed.
topic of discussion that often gets brought up in the debate between retro and modern, which, fittingly enough, thanks to the Souls games, isn't as one-sided as it once was, with the series' mainstream success making it more and more commonplace and accepted for games to incorporate unforgiving difficulty into them. What's interesting, though, is that we're talking about, in the case of a game like Dark Souls, 80 hours of punishing difficulty compared to, what, maybe a couple hours or so in a retro game? Although, that's assuming you can get through it all in a single playthrough. I'd be curious how many hours I've put into Battletoads, a game I've been
Battletoads.
working on for decades and still haven't quite beaten. But an 80-plus hour difficult game, it's tough enough to get through an 80-hour game that's a cakewalk. Although, I suppose it wouldn't take 80 hours depending how good at it you are. I've always thought of the difference in difficulty between retro and modern games like this. Back in the day, games tried to impede your progression so you couldn't just smoke through the game and the game would last longer as a result. But as time went along and games could be made to last longer, restricting progression became less and less necessary, with the benefit of being able to reward the player with a constant sense of progression. I mean, just look at me here, riding my horse and making
Ride my
sweet
horse.
progression. Modern games often try to make the player feel as good as possible. Makes sense to me, games should be enjoyable. On the flip side, there is something to be said about enjoying the challenge of feeling like you need to earn that progression, something myself and many other retro gamers enjoy. Self-imposed challenges for the sake of entertainment might sound counterintuitive, but we as humans do it all the time. Puzzles, holding your breath underwater, dating. The thing about beating challenging games is that it often indicates a mastery of the game. Beat a game like Castlevania and somebody will think, "Dang, you must be good at that game." Beat a game like The Witcher 3 and somebody will think, "Dang, I envy the free time you must have." But besides difficulty, there's also a matter of how simple or complex games are. And while retro games have a reputation for being difficult, they also have a reputation for being simple, which could be considered either a good thing or bad thing, depending how you look at it.
That's
It
true.
starts with the controllers. Controllers used to have far less buttons, which is easier for some people to wrap their heads around, though it didn't take long for
You know, that actually makes me think. Controllers now, for the last few generations, have been so set in stone. I wonder if controllers will ever get more buttons in the future. Like, it's gotten to the point where it feels like controllers are done evolving. But who's to say, really? I wonder.
controllers to match the number of buttons they have now, with the first PlayStation pretty much catching all the way up with the introduction of the DualShock. But with less buttons on a controller, naturally, the controls for the corresponding games was typically
Switch to the
just
button
as
you pay to
straightforward,
use.
with the controls often being as simple as one button to jump, one button to attack, and a directional pad to control movement. Meanwhile, all the buttons on modern controllers can really freak a person out. But I found people get used to them quicker than they might think, since you don't need to be constantly pressing all of the buttons at once. And once you are used to them, they feel pretty good, both in terms of all the cool different things you can do, as well as the comfort of holding the controllers themselves. I tell ya, these companies have really nailed down the ergonomics of these. Awfully comfortable to hold.
Well, I mean, that is one thing that's modern control schemes, period. have really like got down to a science. Like ever since Halo with the dual stick gameplay, like that literally is like the way to play a modern game now. Like it just feels natural. No matter what game I play, it's like I can always assume that left stick is to move, right stick is camera, and fucking we're off to the races, right? I'm a Duke stan. I love the Duke. I have a Duke still. Like it doesn't work that well. I do need to get a new one, or a new used one.
The type of comfy cozy that could put a person to bed. But how many buttons are used ties into game design as well. With modern games having so many different functions you perform, tutorials are often required, and often in ways where they have to just straight up tell you what to do with text bubbles explaining things. But hey, that might just be the most straightforward and effective way to do it. Although I would like to see more modern games find a way to teach you how to play through the gameplay itself. Like a lot of retro games do, where the controls are often simple enough that they can show you how to play by introducing obstacles and mechanics and then gradually ramp them up as you come to grips with them. Or, option B, just throw you into the fire and assume you'll figure it out eventually.
I feel like a lot of that is just as much 2D versus 3D as it is retro versus modern. Like adding that extra dimension really increased the need of like actual tutorials, because like there's so much shit now. It's not just a matter of going left and right. It's like, oh, you've reached an obstacle now. How do you get above this obstacle? There's only one way around it, so you're bound to figure it out, right? But in a 3D game, it's like, this one obstacle, the solution might not be immediately apparent. So it's like, oh, how do I do? Can I sidestep? Do I have to jump over it? Do I have to use a rocket launcher? Like some shit like that.
For me, when debating between modern and retro, it mostly comes down to what I'm in the mood for, which just so happens to be retro games slightly more often than modern games. That said, I personally wouldn't recommend cutting yourself off from either retro games or modern games. I mean, obviously not retro games. I mean,
Get
if
on
you
my
really
lawn.
don't like one or the other, then sure, do what you want and all that jazz, but I think both are worth giving a shot. I feel like I've got it really good because there's lots of older retro games I can go back to, while still getting treated to lots of great indie games that implement a lot of the gameplay design and visual aesthetic that I appreciate, all the while having the bigger budget modern games that I still enjoy from time to time. But with that said, you know the drill for this video's question: what do you prefer between modern and retro? Obviously, most of the answers will be retro, since that's what my channel leans towards, but I'm curious nonetheless. Also, I'd imagine there's some points I didn't make that some of you are chomping at the bit to bring up, which we'd all enjoy reading. So with that, leave your response, and I will see
lower
ya
game
in the
size,
next
yeah.
video.
So yeah, I mean, that was a nice video. He kind of just had like, it was a stream of thought video. I really feel like he just kind of talked, which is good, but I wasn't ready for that style. Like I was expecting data. He threw at me with like, let's have a conversation. I was like, oh, okay. But yeah, that was good. He's a silly guy. I like that humor. I like that humor a lot. But yeah, okay, YouTube, if you liked the video, be sure to like it and subscribe. I'm trying to go to Disney World. Also, comment down below if you got any suggestions for what I should watch next. Bye, duh.